Welcome and good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Cartman, the Director of Religious Education at Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church in Houston, Texas. Our beloved community of faith, reason, and affection welcomes all to grow in mind and spirit as together we build a better world. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, we extend a special welcome and invite you to fill out our online visitor card so you can receive more information about Emerson and our activities. Again, welcome to all. Today, longtime Emersonian Cynthia Miller leads worship with support from me, Emersonians Emma Miller, Bill Hammonds, and Zena Taylor on the tech deck. You'll notice we've muted you. This helps us all to hear the service better, and we encourage you to use the chat box. Following the worship service, we'll have coffee hour time, a chance for you to gather in smaller groups to discuss the service and what's going on in your lives.
Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here.
We are Chalice lighting. We are all longing to go home, to some place we have never been. A place half remembered and half envisioned. We can only catch glimpses from time to time. Community. Somewhere, there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere, a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter, a circle of healing, a circle of friends, someplace where we can be free. Please join us in singing our opening hymn, We Sing Now Together.
We sing now together a song of thanksgiving, rejoicing in the goods which our ages have wrought, for life that enfolds us and helps and heals and holds us, and leads beyond the goals which our forebears once sought. We sing of the freedoms which martyrs and heroes have won by their labor, their sorrow, their pain, the oppressed befriending, our ampler hopes defending, their death becomes a triumph, they died not in vain. We sing of the prophets, the teachers, the dreamers, designers, creators, and workers and seers, our own lives expanding, our gratitude commanding, their deeds have made immortal their days and their years. We sing of community now in the making, in every far continent, region, and land, with those of all races, all times and names and places, we pledge ourselves in covenant firmly to stand.
Our story today is All You Can Imagine by Bernardo Mercolla, and I'd love to share the dedication. This book is dedicated to all those, young and old, who through their hearts and efforts use their imaginations to bring harmony and beauty to the world and make it a better place for us all. This book will tell you a secret. It's about the invisible things in the universe and how you can make them visible. The secret is imagination. Imagination is like a vehicle. You can use it to travel great distances and discover wonderful new ways to look at the universe. Imagination is what we see with our eyes closed. It is what we dream of and what we wish were real. You see, there is a world all around you, and there is a world inside of you. Imagination connects the two. In fact, imagination connects everything everywhere. Like water, imagination can look simple on the surface, while at the same time being as rich, as deep as the ocean. Imagination connects us with what is on the surface, with the depths within. It connects things that we may believe are completely separate. It shows us more about ourselves, about others, and about the beauty of the whole wide world. Imagination is exciting and powerful, but we can't always call up ideas and inspiration whenever we feel like it. Still, we can help them grow and bloom. To do this, we have to open our hearts, our minds, and our eyes to the world around us. Then we feel we are part of the whole universe, and just as we breathe in and out, imagination can now flow through us. When we are in tune with ourselves and with the world, we open the doors of imagination. It is no use hurrying. Imagination takes time, and it only comes when it wants. So we wait and watch. Imagination may arrive slowly. It is as if we are putting together a puzzle without knowing what it will show. Slowly, we find one piece at a time until something new and beautiful appears. Or more imagination may arrive suddenly. It is as if we wake up and immediately remember a brilliant idea we dreamed. This dream idea is like a bird that takes flight. If we don't pay attention, we may lose sight of it. But if we look closely at what we dreamed, we may feel as if we have gained wings of our own. Imagination can introduce us to something completely original. It can help us discover a whole new world. And we want to share what we have seen with everyone else. One way to do this is through art. Art can show others what we saw. It can even help them feel how we felt. We can write songs, stories, or poems. We can paint, draw, or take photographs. We can make crafts. We can also build things. Imagination helps us make new and beautiful inventions. Like art, science is built through imagination and work. Here is another secret. When we share what imagination has shown us, we feel closer to everyone else. We feel more in tune with the universe around us, and we learn more about our own hearts. We can do this over and over again. We open the doors and windows for imagination to come, and we share our discoveries with others. Bit by bit, something wonderful happens. We fill the world with everything our imaginations bring. We are surrounded by beautiful new images that once were just pieces of a puzzle. And we see the flight of colorful birds we never knew existed.
Giving out of what is our own is a transformative act. As a community of faith, we collect an offering not for ourselves or our congregation, but to give to others as a collective action of our community and as a way to live out our shared values. Please give with a generous heart to support the August Share the Plate recipients. Rebuilding Together Houston. For nearly 40 years, Rebuilding Together, RT, has been the only organization in our region to provide hundreds of families annually with non-disaster repairs. Their work adds 10 to 20 years to the life of a home, making the home safe, livable, and more resilient against disaster. They enlist the community volunteers and licensed contractors to repair the homes of low-income elderly, U.S. military veterans, homeowners with disabilities, and working families in need. Learn more at rebuildinghouston.org. And as always, 25% of your offering will go to Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, feeding Houston seniors. We have 3 ways to give. You can text the number on the screen, go to our webpage for online giving, or if you prefer to mail a check, yes, we are still checking the mail at church.
Please find a comfortable place to be and place your feet flat on the floor if you can, so that you might feel grounded, more connected to the earth that nourishes and sustains us all. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so, and take a deep cleansing breath as together we enter into a time of meditation followed by silence. There is a living web that runs through us to all the universe, linking us each with each and through all life on to the distant stars. Each knows a little corner of the world and lives as if this were his all. We no more see the farther reaches of the threads than we see of the future, yet they are there. Touch but one thread, no matter which, the thoughtful eye may trace to distant lands its firm continuing strand, yet lose its filaments as they reach out, but find at last it coming back to him from whom it led. We move as in a fog, aware of self, but only dimly conscious of the rest as they are close to us in sight or feeling. New objects loom up for a time, fade in and out. Then sometimes, as we look on unawares, the fog lifts, and then there's the web in shimmering beauty, reaching past all horizons. We catch our breath, stretch out our eager hands, and then in comes the fog again as we go on, feeling a little foolish, doubting what we had seen. The hands were right, the web is real. Our folly is that we so soon forget.
This reading is from an article in UU World entitled How Science Fiction and Fantasy Shaped My Spiritual Journey by Will Shetterly. I lost my faith in God when I was young because conservative Christians did not offer stories that seemed literally and morally true. Their insistence that I believe made it impossible for me to believe. But my love of fantasy and science fiction helped me see that the ants do not need to talk for Aesop's fables to be true. And Jesus's message of sharing and peace does not require him to rise from the dead. My love of these genres took me further. Jesus rising from the dead is no longer an obstacle to my belief in his teaching. That rising is not a supernatural being's show of power. It's a rider's call for me to trust that when all hope seems to be lost, hope remains. Conservative Christians would say that fantasy and science fiction led me astray. I say those stories led me home. They made it possible to read the Bible as if it were a new text, without 2,000 years of accredited interpretation by people who wanted me to see what they saw or wanted me to see. Those stories made me a Unitarian who believes in a God that is in everything. They made me a Universalist who believes that love is available for every living creature. They made me a Christian who believes that heaven is in us all if we only know how to look. Many writers and readers of science fiction and fantasy will tell you there's nothing religious or spiritual in these books. As a Unitarian Universalist, I respect their interpretation, but I still take revelation where I can find it. A few years back, my sister and I attended Comic Palooza together. It was a Thursday, a non-holiday weekend, so most people there had taken off work to attend the first day of the con. This is the day the diehard fans attend. Most are grinning from ear to ear, excited, and often in full cosplay regalia. As we walk the floor around star autograph booths, the retail area, and artist alley, every little while, someone would yell, "Hi, Cynthia," or I would call a greeting out to a friend I spotted first. After each greeting, my sister would ask, "Where do you know them from?" And I would respond, "Church." After this happened more than a few times, she asked, "What are you, the Church of the Whovians?" And I responded after only a second's thought, "Yes, we are." Fiction has long been a source of spirituality for me. It's helped me learn empathy, foster deeper thoughts about humanity in all its glory and weakness. It's even been a source of respite. It allows us to slip into worlds that are strange and exciting, or familiar and comforting, depending on our need. When we lost a daughter, it was not a conventional religious text or truth, but a Doctor Who quote that helped me stabilize and find my emotional footing again. So we've got a cartoon up, and it's a minister and an assistant minister, and it's standing in front of a bride and groom. And so the minister starts out, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. And the assistant priest says, "Psst, wrong book again, Joseph." So it looks like I'm not the only one who gets things mixed up occasionally. As you use, we don't have just one holy text, but we find universal truths in all the world's religions. We also believe that revelation is ongoing. It's not fixed to a place and time or a small group of men. In fact, one of the 6 sources our congregations affirm and promote is the words and deeds of prophetic people, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Sounds like more than a few works of pop fiction you may have seen. Comic books have long been heavily dependent on themes of social justice and class struggle. If you missed those metaphors as a child, you can certainly be forgiven for it, but go back and take another look. Science fiction and fantasy explore ideas and reflect our values back at us, inviting us to take a good look at our closest held truths with a different lens. The dictionary definition of science fiction is fiction based on imagined future scientific events or technological advances and major social or environmental changes, frequently portraying space or time travel and life on other planets. Simply stated, it's a literature of ideas, and it's not unlike the field of scientific or environmental ethics. We can imagine the effects of our actions on the future, good and bad, and how they might affect the wealthiest and the poorest, the intelligentsia and the worker. The future can be explored as the Hunger Games or Star Trek. Will we embrace a future ideal that sees peace as everyone living in agreement of all things? Beware, that always seems to end in dystopia. Or a future where we value infinite diversity and infinite combination, the Idic, a philosophy introduced by Star Trek. In her book, The Parable of the Sower, Octavia Butler is absolutely prophetic when she writes, "When apparent stability disintegrates, as it must, God is change. People tend to give in to fear and depression, to need and greed. When no influence is strong enough to unify people, they divide. They struggle, one against one, group against group, for survival, position, power. They remember old hates and generate new ones. They create chaos and nurture it. They kill and kill and kill until they are exhausted or destroyed, until they are conquered by outside forces, or until one of them becomes a leader most will follow, or a tyrant most fear." That hits close to home right now, doesn't it? Fantasy fiction doesn't have a dictionary definition. You can look up fantasy and you can look up fiction, but the sum of the two does not add up to the whole. Perhaps it's because it's so based on oral tradition. It began with the stories we told each other over fire and meals of mammoth meat. They are our fairy tales and myths, both ancient and modern. Joseph Campbell said, "Mythology is not a lie. Mythology is poetry. It's metaphorical. It has been said that mythology is the penultimate truth. Penultimate because the ultimate cannot be put into words. It's beyond words, beyond images, beyond the bounding rim of the Buddhist wheel of becoming. Mythology pitches the mind beyond that rim to what can be known but not told." Our modern fantasy tales are still our attempt to find those parts of humanity that can't be understood by looking at the small reality we live our daily lives in. The general subjects that come up when you try to pin down what fantasy fiction is are unrealistic or medieval settings, magic and fictional, sometimes talking animals. These elements are what sometimes lead to fantasy being dismissed as mere escapism, not serious literature. But that can be the very value in it. Neil Gaiman said, fairy tales are more true than not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. And I would add, or befriended. There are a couple generations of geeks who learn their feminism from fantasy. Mercedes Lackey's Warrior Women and Starry-Eyed Goddess showed us feminine strength and compassion. Ursula K. Le Guin introduced us to worlds with multiple genders before most of us realized the truth of that. Organized religions are often present in science fiction and fantasy. The compelling and frightening Bene Gesserit of Frank Herbert's Dune, the beautiful earthseed fake in Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, or the familiar analog to the Anglican Church in Catherine Kurtz's Dareny novels. Sometimes they are recognizably ones we know from the real world. Sometimes they bear little resemblance to the ones we practice. Looking at religion through the lens of more fantastical forms of fiction has great value. It helps some of us bypass our gut responses to magical thinking and religion to rediscover some of the real, emotionally transforming magic that faith and community can have in our lives. It can also help us to take a more intellectual look at the effects of religion without our ingrained responses to what is familiar to us. That can make it just a little easier to cast a critical eye on the structures of power in our churches. We can more easily ask the questions of how centuries-old models aid in the oppression we so desperately need to fight, at how we could go about tearing down what hurts our human family and build up or invent anew structures that aid in our work of social justice and human rights. Obviously, this just skims the surface. There's so much to dig into about how science fiction and fantasy has and continues to help us imagine the present and future we want, to empathize with those whose experiences are vastly different from our own, and to see the world through the eyes of those who have never been invited into the circles of power. I invite you, if you have not already, to explore these worlds, give them some thought, and see them as what they are. Humans figuring out what we are, to ourselves, to each other, to our planet, to our universe. Now, please join us in our closing hymn, There is More Love Somewhere.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Let us extinguish our chalices together in silence. Oh, and that quote that helped me in a dark time, it was the 11th doctor. The way I see it, every life is a pile of good things and bad things. The good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa. The bad things don't always spoil the good things or make them unimportant. Amen. Blessed be, and so say we all.